Hey, Fred Minnick here, and in 2000, my pen just dropped. In 2017, I proudly wrote this book right here, Rum Curious. I love this book. I had so much fun writing it, and I love rum. And there is not a spirit that frustrates me more than rum. Rum is, in my opinion, the world spirit. So like we think of bourbon as America's spirit, Scotch is, obviously Scotland, and every country has its own distinct, spirit. Rum has ties to a lot of the great powers of the 1700s and the 1800s. It was a big part of the Caribbean islands, of Africa, of South America. It is all over the world. Rum has a history. It's not always a good history. It's very connected to slavery and pirating and a lot of really bad things that happened in the world's history. But the spirit has always prevailed. And today, people are always saying, "Hey, rum is about to be the next big thing. Rum's going to be the next bourbon." Well, we've been saying that for 20 years. And the fact is, rum will never, ever reach the pinnacle of other spirits because I don't think the large distillers really want that to happen because they have the lion's share of the market. And in order for rum to grow as a category, the bigger brands that you see on shelves with pirates next to them, they're going to have to give up some market share. And here's a dirty little secret that I actually revealed in my book, Rum Curious, when it came out in 2017, is that our government, the U.S. government, actually gives a lot of benefits to rum distillers in St. Croix and in Puerto Rico. They get a cover-over tax, and we also subsidize rum distilleries. And so there's a lot of distilleries, such as Captain Morgan, that gets money from the U.S. government in order to operate their facility. Now, the reason why is it all goes back to when we acquired the Virgin Islands and they were having troubles running it, and so it was basically became privatized. But back in the day, you could actually get government rum. Like there was actual products coming out there called government rum that was sold, and that was when we were actually operating the distilleries. Now Diageo owns it. There's also a distillery there that is owned by Beam Suntory and Crucian. And look, they're making rum and they're putting it on the shelves and people like it. Now, whether I like it or not, that's not here or there. The fact is that they are getting money from the U.S. government to operate it to help put jobs on the table in St. Croix, which is good in a lot of respects, and it's really good for the island in some ways. However, if you are a rum brand in Barbados or in Boston or in South Africa or in Mexico, you do not get the benefit of those subsidies. You do not get the U.S. government's money to operate. And so when Captain Morgan gets all of this money to operate their facilities, they actually have more money to spend on marketing. And so that's why you see all these advertisements for Captain Morgan. When you walk into a liquor store, there's all these displays. It's the same with Bacardi. Bacardi is not paying the same level of taxes as distillers in the U.S. And so there is an enormous advantage for the larger rum companies to to keep everyone else out. And so they spend all this money on marketing. And if you're a rum distiller in another country, it's almost like competing against someone that's on third base. So if you're a baseball fan, imagine like you have to start the inning at bat while your opponent has someone on third base to start the inning every single time. That's almost what it's like in the rum space. It's very difficult for rum distillers to get an advantage. So that's one thing, and that's a very simple governance issue. And it's something that can be debated. the reasoning for it is good, like it puts jobs on the table in those respective islands. I appreciate that. I don't like what it does for the rest of the rum industry. That's a fact. The other thing is like rum is made in many different styles all over the world. And in some cases, there's rum that's being made illegally. Now, the basic definition of rum is basically has to come from sugarcane or a sugarcane byproduct. And you have rum that's put in the U.S. market that comes from sorghum, and then you have rum put in the U.S. market that has come from sugar beets. Neither one of those are sugarcane. Now, you can make the argument that sorghum is a distant relative to sugarcane, but it is not sugarcane. So those things have hit the market. But that's not even what disrupts the continuity of rum flavors to begin with. It's additives. So traditional rum is made with basically distillate put in barrel, and it's made from molasses, it's distilled, it's put in barrel. There's other types of rum that it's the fresh sugarcane juice, it's distilled, it's put in barrel, or it's distilled and bottled, or it's distilled, put in barreled, dumped and filtered out, and it's clear. However, there are those who actually put additives in that process, such as like honey or sugar or many other things to sweeten it up. That happens in Venezuela. That happens in Panama. It's pretty common in Peru. And there's been a lot of fighting to actually take it to more traditional places like Barbados. And you have distilleries like Appleton in Jamaica, and Foursquare in Barbados, and Chairman's Reserve in St. Lucia that have been fighting the use of additives and trying to educate people in additives over and over and over. And then you have brands who actually apply those methods and are very proud of them and win many awards with them, such as Plantation Rum. Plantation Rum is ran by some Frenchmen who are awesome people, and they have done a very good job of executing strategy in bars, and you'll see at Plantation Rum in bars across the country. But they do add things. Now, they don't call it additives. They don't, they're very proud, and they call it dosage, and they say it's a very similar technique as using champagne. And what happens is you have one side of the world that likes this method of making rum, and then you have another side of the world that likes this method of making rum. Where do I stand on it? I'm typically I'll fall more on the side of like Appleton and Foursquare and St. Lucia, but I can see the rationale and people liking the plantation type styles. But for my palate, I'm more into like the big spirit forward rums. I don't like sweetenings that have been added after the fact. I like sweet to come from the barrel and the distillation technique and the fermentation technique. All that being said, it is frustrating beyond belief to have a conversation with someone and they completely just go to where like, well, you're just being a hater, and that to me is like rum is like talking to a brick wall. Like when you get into the inner circles of rum, you almost like have to choose your side of where you are with that discussion. You have to choose your side, and like you can't get anyone over there, and it's like constant arguing all the time. And people like to say that rum is the Wild West, and they usually say it because of the rules. That is not true. The rules are pretty standard across the world. The enforcement of those rules and the governments that choose not to enforce them, that is the problem. The real rationale, in my opinion, as to why it's the Wild West is because you have people fighting all the time about a very basic thing of what is rum. And so I have, you know, since this book has came out, I've done a lot more writing on it, but and I've done a video here and there. But a lot of people ask me, like, why don't you do more in rum? Because it pisses me off. It pisses me off to no end that you can't have a conversation with somebody about what you like in rum, and about what you believe rum should be, without getting called a hater or uneducated or something like that. It's not that I have any, you know, sensitivities toward the matter. It's the fact that that argument is what will always keep rum down. The Bacardis and the Captain Morgans, they're going to get their money, and while all this arguing's going on over here, they're going to keep growing. And so until rum can actually get on the side of getting to like a traditional standard, you know, belief in what is rum, I do not believe you will ever see rum, you know, get to where it truly belongs. And by the way, prior to bourbon being what it was, Americans drank rum. They drank more rum here than they did whiskey at once upon a time. Now, a lot of that was because we were a colonial America, and the English had a reason to sell molasses and to sell rum, because they got a vig on that. You know, I mean, they got a little piece of that action. But in the 1800s, early 1800s, our government actually began to penalize, tariffing molasses, and placing high duties on rum imports. And so things like Jamaican rum went from being obtainable to costing 5 times the amount of bourbon in the 1840s. So that is one of the big reasons why we became a whiskey country and got away from being a rum country. That being said, my heart is big for rum. I love rum. Some rums that you should check out if you haven't already. In fact, I'm going to St. Lucia to do some barrel picks of this brand. It's called Chairman's Reserve. Excellent, traditional, no additives there. I think Appleton is very, very widely available. I gave Foursquare a 100-point score in this book right here, and there's probably a couple more of their releases that I would give, 95 and up on for Foursquare. So Foursquare all day long, but also don't miss out on Mount Gay. And I'm a big fan of the American brand Privateer. Appleton you can find everywhere. There's a brand also in Jamaica called Hampton. You've got to look a little harder for it, but there's a lot of really great rums that are in the U.S. market. Thomas II is another one that's made here in the United States, but those tend to be what I consider to be traditional rum. Those that are adding after the fact or during the fact, those are for a particular market. And that market is often in the cocktail side. There are those who like to sip on them. I actually have found myself liking a few brands like Cartavio. I've liked some of the plantation brands. There's even been a couple other rum brands that have some additives in there that I've ended up liking a little bit. But for the most part, I like the ones that aren't adding anything. And I understand that some people believe in it. Some people believe there's an art to it. I just really wish we could all come to an agreement and separate them in terms of the branding, because it is hurting the rum category. And until there can be like a unified front on what is rum, and perhaps there are some rum subcategories, rum will only eat itself alive. So that's going to do it for this recording. If you'd like to learn more about rum, check out my book, Rum Curious, the indispensable tasting guide to the world's spirit. I forgot the subtitle. How do you like that? Thank you for tuning in. If you'd be so kind, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and if you want to see this live like the members did, click the join button and become a member. And if you do become a member, you get to suggest ideas for me to record, such as Jeff Perkins. It was his idea for me to do a rant about rum. Until next time, cheers, and remember, vodka sucks.